We are told by the Torah that God made heaven and earth, and we eventually find out later in the book that his name is Yahweh. He's the God of the Hebrews. And it also tells us that he made man out of the dust of the ground, and then he made the woman later on. Now, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 27, it will tell you that he said, "Let us make man." And then it eventually tells you male and female. He created them. But generally speaking, a Bible-believing person, whether they're Old or New Testament, will really teach you that he made the man Adam first and then the woman later, as we can see here in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 21 and 22, and it says, "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man." It would seem a little bit odd to say that based on Genesis chapter 1, 26 and 27, that he made male and female at the same time, like at the same instant. Because then it goes over into chapter 2 saying he caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam and took one of his ribs. So if in an instant in chapter 1 he made both male and female and called their name Adam, that means that both male and female are called Adam but were made at the same time, so that there is no separate creation of Eve or the female later on, as chapter 2 is telling us. Also, if he really made the male and the female in chapter 1 at the same time, like the same instance or happening in creation, then he would have put everyone on earth to sleep, because if their name is Adam and he caused a deep sleep to fall, then he put the entire earth to sleep, all male and female. But then why would he bother to do that, to take a rib out of all of the earth that was sleeping and create a woman, when a female would have already been created, who was named Adam as well? So it seems like the Torah is really trying to get us to believe that he really made a man first and later on made a female after. Now, I've been looking into ancient information, is all this Egyptian Kemet stuff that I've ignored all these years, and other African teachings, looking at what different religious thought systems are saying from ancient times. And the Torah is being challenged and put down, because they're like, how can God just make one man alone? Like, they're saying it doesn't make sense, because you would need a woman as well. And, how long was Adam living first, and so on. So they're basically saying that Adam could not have been first, because women give birth. So for Adam to come to be, it would have been necessary for a woman to come about. So they're saying the Torah is weak right there. And I started to wonder that as well. But those of you who really follow me, not to not to like fight down my stuff and so on, others are doing that. But the ones who really follow me to really see what I'm trying to teach and who are searching themselves, just like I am searching, those ones will understand that I am attempting, although it doesn't seem like that all the time, but I'm attempting to be fair. If the Torah doesn't say something that makes sense, I'm going to just cuss it out. I'm going to put it down. Well, I'm not just going to be looking into ancient African stuff / Kemet stuff and say, oh, because Kemet taught this, then it must be true, and just side with it. No, I'm looking for the truth. And so if ancient Egyptian teaching was garbage, according to how I'm seeing it, then it is also garbage, not just the Torah. So now if the Torah is garbage, then I can understand, because it seems to me so far from what many have been saying before I came along, started looking into this stuff, is that the Torah was taken out of ancient African thought and belief. That is very clear to me right now, even though I'm just starting out my search into these ancient writings and so on. But listen now, the Kemet side, and it's not like I'm defending the Torah per se by saying this, but I'm going to just tell you, the Kemet side cursed the Torah because it said Adam couldn't have been first. That doesn't make sense. And Adam and Eve was just a concept taken from ancient Egypt. And so they put the Torah down like that. But in thinking for myself, I would have to also put down the Kemet views as well. Even though maybe I should wait until I've got many more years of looking into Kemet teachings to do that. But I'm not going to approach it like that. I'm living now. And after spending 20 or 30 years from as a child in the Christian religion, growing up, to devoting all that time to studying the Torah and believing it's right and then finding out that it's not, why should I wait another 20, 30 years or 40 years to study Kemet stuff like I'm trying to be an Egyptian priest, to then realize something is wrong with the Egyptian system? Yeah, sure, I'm black just like you as well, but I'm not just going to accept what Egypt was believing just because we say it's black people and it's our ancient teaching. Sure, we need to get back to some of this stuff because it's more healthy in a lot of ways for your body, health-wise, as well as for your mind, spiritually. But if some things are wrong, they're just wrong. And the way I'm seeing it is that this Egyptian teaching is also wrong that says the woman would have necessarily had to be the first one, or even when they're saying the male and the female. Now, the male and the female coming together, that makes more sense to me. But I think it's a serious problem, though, for the ancient Egyptian side to be saying that they know how this started, because as far as I'm telling now, we don't know how this whole thing called life and existence started. We don't know. But it seems the Torah jumped on the bandwagon of Egypt and made a Torah book out of it and went the wrong way as well. And I'll tell you why. I'm looking into some ancient Egyptian gods, and you've got like Seth and Horus and so on. Like they're saying some of these earlier gods, real super ancient ones, were both, like individually, both male and female, and didn't have a father. Alright? And so they're saying now, like in ancient times, you had female gods, just like you still have today, but they're saying now we've got this Father God concept in the Torah, and that's wrong. But the Kemet side would have to be wrong as well, because how can you get an ancient Egyptian god like Seth and all the others that I don't know their names yet because I'm still learning, and say one of these more ancient Egyptian gods was both male and female, having the male and female principle locked up in them, and that they never had a father. So then you're making that Egyptian god the God that people should look to. But that is a deception as well that they would have taught their people. And I know it's strong word here for me to use the word deception. But understand that the Egyptian stuff, even though it would have come before the Torah, did the same thing the Torah did to us, which is deceive us on this point at least. Because they're teaching something in ancient Egypt that this God, Seth, and the others that they did this to, had both male and female principle built into it, and never had a father to begin with. So, where are they getting the male and female from? I mean, you're really saying to me in ancient Egypt, as some special high priest that trained for 40 years, that your God is the real God, although you eventually had many of them, and he had both male and female in him, and he never had a father. That's not any far cry from what the Torah is saying when it says God made Adam, but he didn't come from a woman because the woman wasn't yet created. Also the same thing as saying God made man in his image, so his image must have had male and female in it, and God was not born from a woman or a man. He just is. So what you're saying to me is the same thing then, that these ancient Egyptian gods that didn't get born from a father, or I might add from a mother, they just are. What you're really telling me is that you don't really know either in ancient Kemet. You don't know how we got here. So you just make up this stuff like the Torah made it up, that male and female is in the God, and the God wasn't born from a father or a mother. How can any God be born or just come to existence and they don't have a mother or father? The real truth is that they don't really know how we came about. They don't know. People don't know how we came about. Whether you studied the Torah today or you studied it 1,000 years ago, or you are from some parts in ancient Africa, whether it's Egypt, ancient Egypt, or elsewhere in Africa, you don't really know. Nile Valley, ancient Nile Valley, you don't know how we came about. You just opened your eyes and realized you just exist, and you look and you see other Africans around you who you wouldn't have called Africans at the time back then. You just know that you just all exist. We just exist. You don't know how. God created, like the Torah is saying, heaven and the earth. That's how the book opens in the Torah. First of all, from what I'm seeing now, nobody ever met this God, like Moses going up a mountain, so nobody met this God, because like Dr. Ben and others that I've been listening to and searching out, they're saying ancient Africans came up with the concept of God. So, if they came up with the concept of God, and nobody ever actually met God because they just came up with the concept of God through science, like Dr. Ben said, Egyptians came up with the concept of God through their science, calculations and of science and exploration of the world around them and so on through science, testing stuff and formulating equations and whatever they did, and they came up with the God concept. So if they came up with the God concept, there's no such God to meet up on a mountain. Like you hear the whole Cushite stuff about, what do they say? God dwells at the foot of the mountain, Mount Happy, God dwells at the foot of the mountain, whatever the proper saying is. Nobody has gone there to see this God. So is that a deception then? Or does God mean something other than what we have been cultured to think through the Bible? In terms of this one great spirit or being, even in ancient times of ancient Cushites and ancient Egyptians, that would have also been a deception in their times, thousands of years ago, in Nile Valley or wherever they were. Because none of them ever saw God. God is something that people made up in their mind, and then they made physical representations of what was in their mind to represent the concept that was in their mind. God is not a real being. Now there may be some kind of creator, because you see, I was always thinking that there is a creator, but he's just not God. And so then I could go on to accepting what the Torah said, that God, in the beginning, God created. How do you know God created anything? There is some kind of a life principle or life force or life, whatever you want to call it. There's all kinds of words we can use here and terms. We can call it spirit or ether or life force or whatever we want to call it. The fact is, nobody has seen this God and ever talked with this supposed God of the Torah or of the Egyptians or of the ancient Cushites. Nobody ever talked with him. Man thought all these things with the thoughts that they had about the world, that they opened their eyes in and realized, I exist. And they started to investigate. They never had God speak to them like that. All thoughts come from inside of your mind, inside of you. So not even ancient Cushites knew that God created anything. Because, like the Torah is saying in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. They cannot prove that. Not even the Torah can prove that. How do you know God created? If you cannot meet this God, talk with him, get a word from him, and prove to other people that you did talk to him and that he wrote this book for you or told you what to write to make you write it as a Torah source writer or editor, if you cannot prove that, then the world has not received any proof from you about your interaction or communication with this God. That then being the case, I am left to understand that the wisdom of your Torah knowledge and obedience does not allow you to present a revelation that you got from God to the world. That is then irresponsible of you spiritually and of your God as well, to communicate with you, to give you a book for the world that you cannot actually convince the world of. You cannot convince the world concerning this book, that he gave it to you, because you can't prove to us that you met him. So the Torah and ancient Egyptian / African concepts on creation, they're just both the guesses of man. They're both the guesses of man. They don't really know how we got here. They just come up with something, the best they could think of, and it worked for them, and they just taught it to people, and it continues today in the form of the Torah and other spiritual teachings everywhere. Nobody on earth knows who created the earth and if the earth was even created, according to the Torah thought. Now, the Torah part is that creating part there. Because, and I'm going to do another lesson on this, but the Torah also lets me know that I cannot be sure that God even created the earth. It says in the beginning he created it. But if there is no God, matter of fact, let me see if I can, instead of making another lesson. Okay, so look at my thoughts here. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 4. One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. So what it's saying is that people just keep living on and on. So it's telling you then one generation comes and goes, and another generation comes. It just continues. That looks to me right there like what we would call eternity. So instead of God being eternal, it's man who is eternal, because we just come and go. And since no one can prove to us the starting point of man, man is the one who is eternal, because we can't prove that we have any beginning. That's if the Torah is correct. But just from looking into life, history, it seems to me, that we don't have any starting point that anyone can convince us of. That's why you hear all the terms, oh, it's not 6,000 years we've been here, 10,000 years, then they say 50,000 years, and others say millions of years. Even some Torah people say millions of years and billions of years. And I've even heard some Torah people say man doesn't have, language doesn't have any beginning. And man doesn't have any beginning then. Because if language always existed, there had to have been, and I just don't want to call names, but even in the Torah community, Hebrew Israelite community, that teaching is there. I've heard it. I've got the recording. But if language has always existed, it could not have existed without man, because it's man who uses language to speak, to communicate. Language cannot exist without man. So if language always existed and there is no beginning to language, then man never had a beginning. Man is the one who is ancient, who is eternal. That's why we cannot find the first man, because maybe there is no such thing as a first man. We just never had any beginning, the best I can figure it out. But we have been taught that it is God who had no beginning and no end. It's you who have no beginning. And we spend all these eons and eons looking for what? The start? Because it is impossible to find it. Why? Because start does not exist. According to all the knowledge in the world that I'm finding out so far, start does not exist. That's why even the Torah here, you see, because the Torah is tricky. That's why I say the Torah is a big trick. Because it gives you some very wise, clever sayings, but it is clever in the way it presents it, so you can't quite tell that it's lying to you, that it's deceiving you, that it's telling you that it doesn't know what it's talking about. The Torah is telling you that man started at a certain point, but then, that's in the book of Genesis because he made man, but then, and it also tells you that God created the earth, heaven and earth, so it's also telling you that earth has a starting point. But when you read later into the book, like Ecclesiastes 1 verse 4, it's really now switching and telling you, not even the Torah knows when generations or when man started, because generation or man just passes away and another man comes up. So man, but based on the Torah here, contradiction, has no starting point. The Torah just simply is just telling you, after it lied to you at the start to say God created the man, the Torah is now telling you later on that there is no starting point to man, because generations just come and go. But the earth abideth forever. That, you see that? Abideth, it stays, it remains. Why? Because not even the earth had a starting point. The Torah is telling me that the earth doesn't have a starting point. Because even if man is eternal and man is only known to live on earth, then that means that the earth has to be eternal as well. So existence is eternal. Existence is without starting point. Language is without starting point, and so on, in some kind of way. But the earth abideth forever, which means God did not create the heaven and the earth. It's just there forever. Now look at the word for forever. Olam. And of course I know you know the Olam, right? It says it means long duration, antiquity. So man is from antiquity. It also says futurity. So it's dealing with eternity, because antiquity, and it's dealing with old, ancient, as far back as you can go until you can't even remember anymore, because you don't have such information to remember past what you are able to remember. It just goes back into the so-called past, on and on and on and on and on, but also goes into the future. That's why it says futurity, forever, ever. So the earth abides forever, it says. So the earth has, and it's basically talking about generations come and go as well. So both generation and earth come and go, of long duration, have long duration, antiquity, so of the past and of the future, forever and ever. Everlasting. The earth is everlasting. It's evermore, perpetual. So earth is also eternal. So all this stuff about they're going to blow up the earth, that's ridiculous. They don't have enough power to blow up earth. And so when they tell you that galaxies spinning and stars spinning together and coming and forming a big cluster and then form the earth, it's a guess. Nobody can reach that far back in so-called time. Nobody. Even if that's how it really happened, that clusters of stuff in space were spinning together and galaxies got sucked into each other until they all just made a big planet and many planets and so on. If that's even the way it really happened, no one has the capabilities today from equipment and whatever to be able to even tell if that is what happened. There's no such information on Earth that we have that can tell us that. Nothing can be measured to communicate those millions or billions and billions and sextillions of years. No one. They can't even date clay pottery properly sometimes. Although it seems they're pretty good at it, but sometimes they wonder. Dating stone, they got to try to find something else around the stone to be able to give an idea of when the stone really got to that spot. So Olam continues to say old, ancient world, but it also says perpetual. So you got something that's ancient, antiquity, and perpetual, and forevermore, reaching into the future in a forevermore kind of way. That means it's not going to end. Never started, never ended. So did God create the heaven and the earth? No. It's a big trick. There is no God, certainly no God of the Torah. It's just gods that people made. Now, if I'm wrong, then this God needs to prove himself to us. Because as far as I'm able to tell, we just simply have something that we call life or existence or force or whatever we want to call it. And everything just is. We are. We exist. And everybody is doing their searching and trying to figure it out, while others try to deceive others by telling you that they know. So the same Olam also means continuous existence, perpetual, everlasting. So man is everlasting, perpetual. That's why it says generations come and go. And the earth is the same way too, to keep life on it. And they said the origin of Olam is from Alam, to conceal, hide, be hidden. And you can look up the rest of that word. Basically, it's telling you that which is Olam, or that which is of antiquity too far in the past, Ergeschicht, that which is so ancient and reaching so far into the future until it's just perpetual or forever lasting, is of a hidden or concealed nature. So even the Torah, with all its deception, is telling you that information is so hidden and so concealed that nobody actually knows it. That's why it is hidden. It is concealed because your mind cannot find it out. You cannot find the first man, as far as we know. Now, if the first man, if there really was a first man and he somehow seems to be living, because he doesn't want to get corrupted by our modern way of living and eating food and so on, then you still haven't found him to talk to him. If he's hiding in some cave somewhere without sunlight, how's he going to live? Although you got some fish that live deep in the ocean that don't use sunlight. But still, I would imagine that whoever could have been called first man would have died already, because it says generations come and go. So first peoples would have gone. But you see the problem there that I just introduced for you to show you how the Torah ties up itself, and even the ancient Egyptian teachings and so on, that they're all just guessing, because it's all religion. Because if life, existence, earth, man is eternal, then there would have really been no first man. Now you say to me as I close, well, you got a serious problem. You just tied up yourself. Because if there's no first man, how did we start? But you see, the problem is, you're thinking that somebody eventually had to be first in order to give birth to somebody else. That's because you still have the regular Torah mind and the regular Egyptian mind and so on, and the African mind that tell you the great God that did this and whatever, and dwelling at the foot of the mountain, God happy and so on. Because what you don't understand about that thinking is that it is telling us that God can be eternal, but you can't think that man can be eternal. You say, well, man had to have had a starting point. Well, how come God never had to have a starting point? If it's possible for God to not have a starting point, why is it not possible for man? And man is the one you see. So shouldn't you have more faith in man than faith in God? Than faith in God never having a starting point to you've never seen, you've never witnessed, you can't prove him, but you can prove man exists. I seem more sensible in saying that until I can verify this God and until he can prove and verify himself in a responsible manner to the world, then I have to choose to believe in the thing that I can see right in front of me, in the earth and in man. They're tangible. I can interact with it all, with the earth and with other people, and we can discuss and talk and try to figure out stuff and so on. So we know we are real and we know the earth under our feet. That's real as well. But putting belief in God that you cannot see or communicate with in any way, that is sheer stupidity. It's religious stupidity and indoctrination. They don't know the start of earth or the start of man. They, meaning all the people teaching us from ancient times, even ancient Cushites and so on, not trying to beat up on them, but the ancient Egyptians and so on, they never knew it. And if they never knew it and the Torah came later on, then I guarantee we don't know it either. The start of man, we don't know. The start of earth, we don't know.